What's up, guys? So today we got a question from a viewer who's a former college wrestler just like me. His name is Cash Thompson 1490. This guy commented on one of the YouTube videos. Guys, with these questions, please, if you have any question, there's no dumb question, leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. But he says, I have one question for you. As someone who also comes from a college wrestling background, I personally feel like BJJ practices are a bit easier than college wrestling practice. I know there are various factors such as training partners, my own pace of drilling, and different positional training that can all make it easier or harder. However, I'm just wondering from a broader perspective, should I accept that BJJ is a little less demanding than a college level wrestling practice, or should I be trying to get in even more workouts outside of BJJ practice to exhaust myself? Side note, I recently have somewhat accepted that it is less demanding, but still try to push myself while at practice as much as I can, but not to the point of feeling like I am dying every single day like I did in college. I just wanted to know your response before I spend the next year not pushing myself hard enough if I choose the wrong answer. Thank you for the question. There's a lot of factors, right? You guys can see I use my trusty whiteboard here, but there's a lot of factors when it comes to intensity of training in Jiu-Jitsu versus wrestling, and I want to talk about four things in particular. We'll go through them one-on-one. Number one is time and place. Okay, this is pretty broad. In wrestling, there's seasons, right? There's, let's say, October to March, you have your college wrestling season, right? You first compete in November, but October, for the most part, is when you officially start training, sometimes September. With that being said, the season is a lot shorter than if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, which I'm assuming you're someone who wants to compete because you're a college wrestler and we tend to want to compete. You didn't specify, but the big difference is that jiu-jitsu competitions are all year round, meaning it's not like wrestling where like you have your opens to kind of warm up and your dual meets. It's, all right, you have to pay, you have to travel, and you have to compete, and some tournaments are in March, some tournaments are in December, some tournaments are in June, right? So you're consistently traveling and competing. So you have to keep that in mind. It's so much longer. It's year round. So just think about that compared to wrestling, which is relatively very short season. Number two is the technical demands of BJJ versus wrestling. Intensity in wrestling is often rewarded, especially in American culture, where folk style wrestling tends to be less technical and more hard-nosed. Guys, I'm a folk style wrestler. I also wrestled freestyle and Greco my whole life. Yes, folk style is very technical. I'm not saying it's not technical. I'm just saying that it often tends to lean towards more of a grindy, grittier style, whereas that's not always the best for jiu-jitsu, right? It's I'm not perfect at jiu-jitsu, you know, I'm getting better, but I would say I'm pretty technical, and my pace is a lot slower in jiu-jitsu than it was in wrestling. Even when I wrestle, right? Even when I'm doing takedowns against another jiu-jitsu person who's not as good at me at takedowns, it's slower, it's more methodical, I'm being a lot more thoughtful, just because the consequences of speed and intensity are very high in jiu-jitsu, right? If a guy's more technical than you, it doesn't matter how much better your conditioning is than him, he's gonna beat you. So you have to think about the fact that it's not, intensity doesn't always mean good. It feels good to us because we're getting our heart rate up, and as wrestlers, that's what we learn. We learn like we're pushing ourselves, our heart rate is up, that equals being good, but that's not necessarily the best. And you talked about that, like you clearly know about situational rolling and stuff. I would suggest that all wrestlers do more situational rolling than live rolling, because we tend to have an advantage in live rolling, especially because we tend to be younger, more athletic, more explosive, and have better cardio than most of our partners at most jiu-jitsu gyms, unless you're at like a B team or a New Wave or a Pedigo, where there's lots of athletes. When you're training with more hobbyists and stuff, you probably should be doing a lot more pin escapes, submission escapes, and situational rounds in general, just because no matter how hard even some of those people work, you know, they have 9-to-5 jobs, they have families, they're a little bit older, they're never gonna be as athletic as you, so they're not gonna be able to challenge you in that space, you know? So less full rolls, more situational, which you kind of already know. Training partners, I mean, I guess that kind of just talks about what I just said, right? There's less athletic people in general at jiu-jitsu gyms because the age range tends to be like 25 to 40 and older, right? So there's less people who have college wrestling or even high school wrestling experience or even any athletic level of experience, and they're also, just like I said, they have 9-to-5 jobs, and you know, jiu-jitsu is not their life. Okay, you have to manage your training doing situational. Like 90% of my training is situational, because the sad thing for me is no matter where I go, I'm always one of the biggest guys, so I don't tend to get that many full rounds. And the reason is just because it's scary for people who are smaller, right? And I don't blame them. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we put way too much emphasis on full rounds than we should. I do a ton of situational and a ton of specific rounds with partners and try to work at areas that they're really good. And I think that's helped me improve a lot. Again, you already know this, but situational rounds are the way to go, especially when you're a lot more athletic than your partners. And the thing about being a lot more athletic than your partners is that you often will get away with a lot of BS that wouldn't work in competition, but in situational rounds, you'll rarely get away with that stuff because it's isolated, it's less athletic, and it's more technical. And then we'll talk about last thing is scaling intensity. The closer I get to competition, the higher my intensity gets. What I mean by this is if I know I'm competing in 6 weeks, for like 5 weeks, I'll go really hard. Well, I'll say 4.5 to 5 weeks, right? I'm about a week and a half out from pants. Now I'm chilling, right? I'm not going hard anymore. But about 4 weeks out, when I have about a 5 weeks out, those initial 4 weeks, I scale my intensity with things like assault bike sprints, heavier lifting, and maybe 1 or 2 really hard wrestling rounds. Or I would say 1 or 2 hard wrestling level round or sessions a week. So like I'll have a full session where maybe I'm doing about 50 minutes of hard, intense rolls. But again, maybe that's once or twice a week max. The place where I get most of my cardio, man, to be completely honest, is on the assault bike. I love the assault bike. I kill it. I just do Tabata. If you guys want to know, assault bike workouts, just look up assault bike Tabata. But some people don't like that stuff. I enjoy it. I do not like running. I just don't like it. It hurts me pretty much every time. But I think as far as like getting your conditioning, getting your lung blows in, you don't actually have to do that necessarily on the jiu-jitsu mats because that's often extremely dangerous. Overall, jiu-jitsu is a lot less strenuous than wrestling physically. Technically, jiu-jitsu is a lot more strenuous. There's just so many more variables. And so many people are very well-rounded when you're competing, so it's very difficult to catch up technically to everyone. But I think that should be your main focus is while you're in jiu-jitsu training sessions, technicality should be the focus. Closer you get to competition, you'll have a couple more rolls that are a lot harder, but you really do have to go out and search. I would even suggest, hey, you're getting close to competition, go back to your high school wrestling room or find a high school wrestling room or college wrestling room or club around and do one of those sessions a week. That can give you that wrestling feeling again, but you're probably never gonna find the type of training you had when you wrestled in college unless you're at one of these really big schools that has a really good camp. This is just my opinion. Hopefully this video helps. It gave you a couple good ideas. And I just want to remind you guys, my Patreon is open. You get a 7-day free trial where you can get full access to seminars. My Patreon will just be seminar footage, and it'll be footage. There'll be 2 class footages a week, which will be about 30 to 40 minutes each. I teach twice a week here in Montreal. I'm going to be recording those and putting those on Patreon for you guys, where you can watch it and learn along with me and my students. On top of that, like I said, anytime I do a seminar, I'm currently on a seminar tour with 16 seminars. I'm going to put on the technique from the seminars into the Patreon for you guys to watch. Currently, there's a slide-by seminar that's up. I think you guys will love it. Lots of you guys asked me for a slide-by instructional. I don't have one yet, but at least I have the seminar up, which I think you guys will find helpful. And it's technically free right now, so click above or whatever, or check out the description below. If you guys want to learn more individualized techniques, as you will see like here, right, I have a duck under instructional, ankle pick, single leg, underhook, takedowns for older grapplers, solo drills, etc., etc. Those instructionals range from like 37 to 67 bucks, and they're one-off instructionals. It's not like Patreon where it's a subscription. If you want to deep dive into one particular position, I have so many instructionals, it's crazy. You can go to brandonreed3x.com/store or click the button above. It's going to be in one of these spots, or check out the links below to check out very specific instructionals. Hopefully you guys found the video helpful. Hopefully the answer was good. I'll talk to you guys next time.